I mentioned earlier interactive session. Interactive session, I have to admit that when I stood in front of my laptop and I tried to put together the agenda, and it came to it needs to have a lot more interaction. There was one name that came immediately to my mind that I knew that can help me, and that's Daniel. Daniel Hommel, you might remember him as the former ICF president, but you might remember him for other things, like whenever you ask questions about system thinking, he can go in a full debate. When you ask questions about Luhmann, if you want to do him a favor, ask him things like that, oh, he can talk. And he's not actually knowledgeable, it's not just that he can talk. And the other thing that you might remember, Daniel from last year always, I'm sorry that I do this again, is based on his gray t-shirt that I'm sure that he has one also today on. See? That's Daniel Homan. Daniel is going to moderate, first of all, the conversation here in the middle, and after that, all of these wonderful people that come here in the middle will join you. Some sort of, you want to call it in a breakout room, what we're trying to replicate is a concept that was developed by Alan Kay and Rick Wolf in Canada a lot of years ago, and it was called kitchen table conversations. I was implying that you get the voice of all of the stakeholders in a conversation, and that's everyone here in the room. We've done the job of selecting a couple of, we think, really interesting people, bring them back here in the middle, and after that, it's on Daniel and all of you to create the content. Daniel, do you want to pick it up?
Yes, try. Oh, yeah, it works. Great. So first we need to check if the crowd is actually functioning properly. So please raise your hand if you're from Berlin. So now raise your hand if you're not from Berlin. Okay, there is not much overlap there. It seems to be working. It's good. It's not broken. Okay, so we're now moving into a two-part session. The first part is a panel discussion that then, in the end, becomes a bit like an interactive fishbowl-like session where you all can get involved and talk to the speakers and basically provide input for what's going to come. The topic is how can organizations prepare for the future? And I'm going to say a few words more, but before we start, I would like to ask the panel speakers to join me and maybe grab a seat and maybe get seated here in the middle. Yes. So, that looks correct. We have 6 people, that's exactly the number we need. So that's also working. Great. So I already got introduced. I would like you to introduce yourselves. Maybe you can say, your name, your role, the organization you're representing. Keep it brief, 2-3 sentences. And I'm just going to start here. Who are you?
Hi, everybody. My name is Corina Alexandra Pop, and I work at the intersection of strategy, creativity, and technology. I currently work for HP in the industrial print arm of HP, that being called Brand Innovation, and I'm responsible for leading the creative services worldwide for HP. I'm based in Barcelona.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura McKenzie. I'm a principal behavioral scientist for Toshan. My primary role there is to work on Surprise Surprise, our AI coach. So spend a lot of time in there making sure that it applies effective coaching methodologies. You'll hear more about that tomorrow. I'm based in Stuttgart, Germany, but I am from the US.
I'm Melissa. I work for the Haufe Academy, which is maybe many of you know it, the German market leader for education, and I'm responsible for our coach pool. We have 500 coaches, and I'm responsible for selecting them. And I'm based in Munich, but the Haufe Academy is in Freiburg, so I travel often there.
So much. I'm Tevis, very nice to meet you all. I'm based in New York City. I chair Human Capital Management Department at New York University, the largest private university in the US. And I also host annually Coaching and Technology Summit. And I also co-authored a book on digital coaching, which was a follow-up from 3 of our coaching summits. So.
Hi everyone, Robert Garcia, Vice President of the International Coaching Federation. I'm thrilled to be back. Thank you very much in Berlin again. I'm leading the ICF coaching in organizations where we support the growth of coaching culture within organizations. So we're thrilled to really talk about how coaching can be accelerated through we have a great program coming up. Leaders using coaching skills that we're very excited about. In addition, we have the Coaching Culture Compass, which is an assessment, maturity matrix, and insights report that will go to organizations to take a snapshot of where they are and, more importantly, where they need to go to really build coaching within the organizations and transform by coaching.
Well, hi, I'm Armin, I'm the founder of Speak. We are here, one of the sponsors. We're a people development platform. And within that platform, we provide business coaching services, mentoring services, leadership training, intercultural training, with a strong focus on business coaching driven by AI through all the product lines within the platform. Time Magazine, Top 20, EdTech, so, you know, companies who want to talk to us, feel free. Thank you.
So, amazing. Now you know who the speakers are. And as I already said, the topic is how can organizations prepare for the future? And to set a little bit of a frame, I think there is a couple of changes happening that we can already see since a few years. For example, we're moving from like rigid, sometimes even deep hierarchies to flatter hierarchies with empowered teams, maybe agile teams. We're moving from static roles, you get hired for a job and then you do exactly that job for 20 years, to more dynamic collaboration. Things are changing fast. People are moving more often horizontally through the organization. And it seems to me that AI technology in particular is accelerating those developments. And this is the field that I would like to explore with you. And we have a rich set of different perspectives. We have people working in organizations implementing stuff. We have a behavioral scientist. We have you working in Haufe being responsible for the coach trainers. We have an academic perspective. We have the coaching association. We have a coaching platform, mentoring platform, different things. So we have a rich set of perspectives here to have a look at this. And I prepared a couple of questions for each person individually that I would like to hear first, and then we'll open for the rest of the first part, the discussion amongst all of you. And then we'll move into the interactive part where you guys in the back can also add. And I would like to start with Laurel. As a behavioral scientist, how do you see AI-enhanced workflows? Like, what, from your perspective, what can you say about this? What do the companies need to look at?
So in terms of AI-enhanced workflows, the first thing I would say that I've noticed about AI is that there's a lot of implementation, but maybe a lack of strategy around adoption of that AI technology. And so while workflows on your face and on paper can look incredibly valuable, productivity tools, different tools to help people be more productive at work or perform better at work, if they're not enabled to adopt that technology, then, well, you just wasted your money in buying it, right? Because if a company buys Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, but no one adopts it, then what was the point, really, right? And so from a behavioral scientist perspective, what I'm thinking about is when we're adopting AI into our workplaces, how do we get people on board with that? How do we get people to be open to changing their ways of working, to being open to changing their habits at work, and to find value in that piece of AI technology to make it work for them and help them as opposed to do the thinking for them. I know that's kind of a double for, but what we want to avoid is it replacing your work, but enabling you to be more productive effectively while not just being kind of left on the side, because like, there's no point in adopting the technology if we don't actually get people to use it, right? So how can we really bring people along in the journey of this excitement on AI and not just put it in there because it's cool to have?
Thank you, and it's a perfect bridge to ask Corinna. You're like out there with creative teams actually working for clients. You know, all the other people are a bit more like academic perspective, association perspective, like not really directly involved. Now that AI is part of the daily toolkit, how do your teams adopt this?
In order to answer this question, I would like to put things a little bit in the context of what creative teams do in organizations, because I think for a lot of folks, when you think about creativity, people can maybe think about fine arts or a painter in front of the canvas freely expressing themselves. What we do as creative teams, ultimately what we are paid to do is to sell a product or a service. And in order to sell this product or service, of course, we need to do it in a way that creates a meaningful communication channel with the intended target audience, but that also in the end delivers the business results that we are expected to deliver. So then we deliver all these wonderful results by ultimately coming up with very creative concepts. And then we have this technology like AI that is supporting us in achieving these concepts. And I think the most powerful question that has been posed to creative teams in the last couple of years is, how do you really add value? And in order for us to answer this question over the last couple of years, because it's been something that has really been changing the way we operate, is we had to go back to actually how do we add value as creatives. And the most valuable part here comes in the insight that is always human-led. And the most powerful and award-winning campaigns have always been human-led, including the ones in the last couple of years.
Mm-hmm. So, interesting. I would like to go next to Robert. Robert, you're co-responsible for coaching in organizations. Where do you see coaching cultures evolve the most rapidly or at all that support these kinds of changes that we have heard about?
We welcome AI-enabled coaching. In fact, we, in the beginning, a few years ago, maybe a decade ago, when we started talking about this, we didn't even like the term human coach, because was there anything other than a human coach? But now we're finding that we need to make that distinction, human coach versus AI-enabled coach. And we welcome that. It's part of what we call a coaching culture. We used to talk about external coaches coming into the organization and providing those services. As we were developing, or as companies were developing internal coaches, when I would speak, they would say, so you're building internal coaching capabilities, that means that there's not going to be a need for external coaches. And I would say, no, quite the contrary, it's going to create more of an awareness of coaching. More people are going to experience coaching. There's going to be more opportunities for everyone. I don't get that anymore. Now I get, oh, so this AI coaching, they're going to replace me. So everybody's always fearful of who's coming next, what's coming next. And again, I'm saying, no, there's more opportunities. So I see this as scalability. We talk a lot about budgets or the opportunities for to create a coaching culture. You need scalability. And I think AI-enabled coaching platforms also are an integral part of creating this culture of coaching. We talk a lot about, we've done a lot of research around a coaching culture. So we've done a study with the Human Capital Institute this is the 7th time that we've done it. And it talks about coaching available for everyone. There's no way that you can do this with either internal coaching capabilities or external coaching capabilities. You've got to have several ways for people to do that. One of the things I like the most about AI coaching is that it's available, we talked about this earlier this morning, 24/7. You can be at 3 a.m., have this brilliant idea and say, I need to talk to somebody. I need to think this through. Is it work? Of course, sometimes you wake up in the morning and say, what was I thinking? But maybe you can explore that possibility whenever, wherever you are. We also know anecdotally that younger generations really like to talk to robots. Because in fact I have somebody on my team that says, "Oh, I'd rather talk to an AI-enabled coach, think things through, and maybe it's more of a transactional, less of a transformational type, but at least getting things out and talking without what he says. It's like it's non-judgmental. There may be somebody behind it, but the feeling is that nobody's really going to evaluate what I do. So I think there is space and room for everything, and it's exciting to embrace and be part of this transformation of our profession and our industry.
Thanks. So, Anna, you're an expert in hybrid workplaces, digital coaching, and that kind of stuff. So, what do you see? How does HR and universities and so on need to change in order to prepare the leaders of the future, probably?
I think we are on the front end of this transformation because we need to think several years ahead of why would people want to, what kind of skills, what are they coming to education or certification for? And so we need to be many years ahead so that we can build into the development process of what they're going to be doing. And what I'm seeing and the way I look at AI is like a giant mirror in front of humanity. And a lot of the challenges we have to do with our own gaps and deficiencies, like biases, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a reflection of what we project out into this technology. And by kind of sort of sharing the knowledge part of what humanity represented, the cognitive work that we've been doing, and teaching body of knowledge, the formulas, research, et cetera, that is easily outsourced to AI in a more efficient way. So now we have to go in reverse. Remember, and I don't know about Europe, but in the US, 3-year-olds were sent to computer camps so that they develop analytical skills, and a lot of the arts and all the creative stuff was, taken out of the curriculum because where the future was analytics. That's how we were going to look at it. And now we have to do the reverse. We're all rethinking if that particular analytical and structured and more research type of knowledge is going to be done for us. Where is the opportunity? And I think as society, we need to rethink and reprioritize. This is where we're kind of in the ethical dilemma and in the crisis in a way, because we have to confront our own decisions early on to kind of, even psychology became analytical. Everything became data. Data was going to solve, you remember big data? It was going to solve everything because we could reduce humanity to digits. And now we are kind of waking up to the fact that we really need to be working on other types of skills, and you mentioned that. And I think I am personally thinking about, and what I do in the classroom, it's a lot of it experiential, immersive, et cetera, et cetera. So I see coaching is coming into the focus and is becoming the way to develop humans, to train humans, to educate humans, because AI is going to be standing by and providing all the knowledge they need. So that's kind of my perspective.
Can I echo something that Anna said?
Yeah, that's not part of the plan, but let's do it.
Spontaneity is a human skill, right? I thought it was a very interesting metaphor that you were saying that AI is putting this mirror in front of humanity. And I see that very well applied in creativity and actually in a lot of other disciplines. Because I think there was this phrase that I heard many years ago in IT, garbage in, garbage out. I think that applies very well in creativity, where it's the power of the insight and the concept that is what frames the quality of the output of a generative AI tool, but also the way it is applied across disciplines.
Yeah. Thank you. We can continue like this. If you feel like the urgent need to respond to something, we can do it. I'm going to open the discussion anyway to everyone after we heard from everybody. I just want to continue to prime the conversation a bit. And the next person I'd like to hear from is Armin. Armin, as a founder of a coaching platform, but you're also offering language training and mentoring services and so on. With AI, you have new opportunities to scale certain aspects of the coaching. The technology also allows to basically a hyper-personalization that was not possible doing everything by hand. How do we balance this with human-centered coaching? I almost said humor-centered. Human-centered coaching. Like, how do we keep the balance?
Well, human-centric actually is the lead there. The balance between technology and human centricity is the holy grail for providers. And that's exactly the point where we're trying to drive a margin without losing any impact on our coaches and our customers. So I would like to use a term that Ethan Waller came up with, is co-intelligence. So using AI just for the sake of it, as the outcome, it doesn't work, of course. So using AI as an augmentation to what we do in the coaching process as a platform does work. It does work in language training, works in coaching, works in basically every communication-based interaction. You can leave something to the AI, but the core needs to be with humans. That's what we strongly believe. It speaks of the opportunity here, obviously, is that we can move from a one-size-fits-all to personalization that's driven by AI. That wasn't possible for 3 years ago. Everybody talked about personalization in learning and in training and coaching active work. So now it does work. It does work at scale, and that's something that we facilitate. CoachUp does it, we do it. Health does it, so it's nothing specific to Speaks. What we think is that a good platform that really adds value, and I think we heard the term value already, so it doesn't really matter whether you do AI just for the sake of it, apart from China, I have to say, and just buy everything that's new. But in this market here, we have to actually demonstrate the value of what we provide to our customers. And if we don't do that, they won't buy it. And human centricity is the core of it. If technology is the same as technology that CoachUp is using and we are using, we are not Google, right? So it's pretty much the same technology. At one point it will plateau. So people will make the difference. That's a very centric and crucial idea that we have. In the end, it's people. We invest a lot in people, and I think other providers do that as well. So it's, and we talk a lot about ethics here, thinking the market we're in. It's not only about standards in ethics and the manifesto that we saw yesterday. It's also in technical aspects, providing safe spaces not only for people but also for our customers, safe data spaces. So we recreated the entire system. We built our own LLM, we have our own service, we have our own GPUs. It's all encapsulated within Europe. So that's one thing I think that's driving the market and real-time, real access. And I think that just to finalize this, the real challenge really is that we can only drive transformation of people. That's the one thing. We just heard it. AI is a transactional tool. In many respects, it will remain transactional the way it is used. Once it will be transformational with the impact that you have in an organization, especially, it needs to be driven by people.
Thank you. So, Alyssa, you're working with 500 plus coaches at Haufe. And as far as I know, you're also responsible for the coach-trainer relationships and so on. So how do you prepare at Haufe? How do you prepare the coach trainers for this world where AI plays such a big role in coaching?
So what I can say from my perspective is that there's like a spectrum. So not using AI is no possibility, kind of. You cannot ignore the development. And so it's important that coaches and also coach trainers think about how it can be used also to upskill the own coaching process, the own development. And so this was also like if we look back some years ago, maybe for the one or other coach, it wasn't thinkable that you could do online coaching before Corona. So this was also a development where a lot of coaches, there was a change process for them as well, and where we also tried to give ideas or also like trainings how you can use digital skills like tools like Zoom. And that's the one thing that that you cannot ignore. You need it to think about it, how it can also help you in the process. But we also think, as you mentioned as well, that the AI tools can help coaches to improve the processes and maybe to be like a co-facilitator to in between sessions that you can give some ideas to the coaches, like a bot that could work with the coaches, but in the end, the coach will not be replaced by AI, and it's still important to have a look on the human factors, like we heard this morning, like how can a coach be a philosopher, or how can intuition be part of the process, the human presence, and also like being an accountability partner, like really physically meeting with someone is different for a lot of people than meeting digitally. So there are those different poles and aspects, and I think it's important to still have an individual view on that as well.
So, we have still about like 13-ish minutes for that first part of the conversation, and now I'd like to hear like randomly from everybody who wants to speak on it. Anna already brought up the topic of ethics, but I'd also want to ask, what's on top of ethics, what's the role of empathy, human connection, and these kind of factors in a world where coaching organizations are supercharged by AI? And we'll do this popcorn style. Whoever feels hot enough to pop up just grabs the mic and goes.
Ethics, standards. So we are the largest representative of professional coaches in the world. We have almost or more than 60,000 members. We have a tremendous responsibility as it relates to human coaching and ethics. We have a coalition that we've developed to talk to a lot of the individuals that we're building these AI coaching capabilities, and we wanted to make sure that our standards were upheld, that the competencies are being addressed, because we know it's important. We also know that you need to identify, is this a human behind this, or is it a machine behind it? Because people need to know, and sometimes it's hard to know. In fact, I recently got a random call, and I hardly ever, but it sounded like a robot, and I'm like, is this a human person? She says, yes, I am a human, but she was the robot's probably saying that, right? but she was reading off a script, but it's important. I mean, I think it's important to recognize that, and organizations, I think, are looking at competencies around coaching supervision with human coaches, and we need to also certainly supervise what's happening. Also, confidentiality. We get a lot of inquiries. So we have almost 100 companies that are member organizations, and they reach out to us as the representative of the profession to say, how do we supervise coaches internally? How do we integrate these AI-enabled coaching? How do we contract with platforms? What questions do we ask? How can we measure? So we get a lot of requests for how do we measure the impact that the coaching is having. So all of this is a very important part of what we do, and important because we're self-regulated, and we don't want that to change. So we need to uphold the ethics and standards. We're very fortunate that we have an internal review board. Anytime that there is anything, that's why it's so important to contract with a credentialed coach, a member of a professional association, because there's someone that you can rely on, that you can reach out to and address some of the issues. So we don't want it all to be punitive, but we want it to be remedial. Sorry. So, am I passionate? Am I hot about ethics?
Who wants to add or respond? Or you can all go.
Yeah, I just want to pull on the thread that, the one that I really appreciated in the demos that we had. And that's about building kind of an institutionalized structure, and that's what Robert represents. Because, when we everywhere here we use the word human, and we're kind of flattening what a human is. And I think from the very beginning that I arrived a few hours ago, I've been trying to say that there are all kinds of humans, and there's a dark side to humanity. And I think we need to be prepared. We need to, yes, as we kind of organize and establish rules and guidelines and ethics, it's still not an orthodoxy. We need to be able to engage in conversations with their opposing point of view. And let me give you an example. Unfortunately, in our country now, there is a very strong anti-empathy movement. It starts with Silicon Valley, of all places. And I actually did a lot of research on empathy, wrote a whole chapter in my book of anti-empathy. There is a line of thinking, philosophical, that empathy actually doesn't get you much. Because you can spend all of your time empathizing with humans and you don't get stuff done, right? So what I am looking for, and also from this community and our communities that we get together, is how do we develop resilience, empathy for the people who are not necessarily on the same page. The same thing with the ethics, as you know, you go cross-culturally, and it's not an alignment around what ethics represent. And I think we need to be able to, defend our point of view, but also to use the word sell it. Sell it in a good sense of being able to be convincing and get people to our side by arguing, having conversations, et cetera, rather than saying, these are the rules, and because you're not following them, you're a bad person. So, and I'm just speaking from the reality where we're in and kind of finding supportive community here, but also thinking, where do we fall short on, establishing that kind of golden standard?
So who else want to defend or sell their point?
In a somewhat weird response to this, the ethics discussion, there's lots of fear here. I'm not a coach, I have to say, so as a bit of an outsider, I sense. Thank you very much. I sense a lot of concern and fear about AI replacing you. Not talking about this specifically empathy. Empathy is something that we believe, and lots of people on the planet believe, is something that differentiates us from machines, and we'll be doing that going forward. So the one thing that we see here in this coaching community, that there's this fear of being replaced. And that's wrong. There are people in this movement that was just mentioned in Silicon Valley, Peter Thiel, for example, or the Germans actually. So who really want to replace people with machines for economical reasons, because they believe it's good, whatever. Most of us using technology don't want to replace, we want to augment, and we replace activities, and that's a completely different story. In our entire production line, if you want to put it that way, there are some activities that we have coaches or trainers did, which AI just does better, like reviews or any kind of summaries and this kind of stuff that you don't want to do anyway. Right? So we replace activities, and that's something in the entire ethics discussion that everybody needs to understand, that there are some people out there who want to replace, and most of us want to augment, and that's a very important thing. So we are not enemies as software providers. We're in the same boat. We believe in the same values. We believe in empathy as a driver for humanity. And that's when so we're not Peter Thiel, we're not Elon Musk and all this kind of stuff. And this is where we need to work together to get this uniquely human capability really working hard and driving transformation in society and allowing those people to get ahead.
So, who's next? Yeah. I'll actually add a couple of minutes.
I promise not to take every single one of those minutes. But there's a couple of things that I wanted to respond to. And part of it, Robert, was what you were saying, is, at Coach Hub, and I'm sure it speaks, our coaches have to be certified at a certain level to be able to work with our clients, because we want to provide our clients and our coachees a high standard of coaching. In fact, we don't take coaches that aren't PCC qualified or above or equivalent in the NCC and things like that. So when we produce an AI coach, the question naturally becomes, how do we produce a quality? Because at the end of the day, we're changing someone's life. And so how do we do that ethically and responsibly, even with an AI coach? What does that look like? Because our human coaches, you all are all held to standards, especially in any of the governing bodies that you work with. So how do we do that with AI? And so we look to the ICF, like what's the ICF doing to help build a standard that we can adhere to build confidence in what we're building for not only our clients, but also so our coaches understand that we're meeting that standard. So, for example, the work with Joel and Susie on the ICF AI standards, we're looking closely at those because we want to adhere to standards the same way that we ask human coaches to. And that's really important for us because of how much confidence that breeds in not only our clients, but that we're building something worthwhile because we understand that this technology could potentially change lives and we want to do that ethically. But additionally, another interesting part that we've faced is we're thinking about things like, can AI demonstrate empathy? And that's a big question that we've seen in research. And there's mixed research on it. Some research says, yes, it can, and some says, no, it can't. So our question is, well, what do our clients think? So there's a few clients that are testing our AI coach early, and there's mixed results, depending on who you're talking to. Some say it's not empathic enough. They want it to demonstrate more understanding. And then others say it's too understanding. It understands too much. It's trying to be too empathic with me. And so it's a tricky balance in this wild world of AI coaching that's still kind of finding its place in the world because we don't know where it's going to fit, where we want to make sure we're maintaining some type of ethical standard in its use. But also, how do we get AI to be in any level empathic in a way that resonates with a continuum of people, one end that think it's not empathic at all, and the other end that wants it to be incredibly emotionally supportive of that person. So it's an incredibly dynamic challenge that we're having to tackle to figure out what that might look like as we try and incorporate an AI coach into our ecosystem with human coaches while also not replacing them, but giving them a space.
This is jump in from
Sure.
But the same applies to human coaches. I mean, we kind of, there are human coaches who are empathetic and those who are confrontational, and it depends on what you need them for. I mean, we've talked about this. You have to have a variety of styles.
Yep.
And for some reason, again, this is the whole point I mentioned, we just say human.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of looks at it as like, we know what that is. But if you start unpacking it, you see that there's so much variation there that we assume compared to, that's what I'm saying, the mirror, compared to AI, we kind of think that we're all holding human to the same standard.
I want to add on to that, because that's the challenge that we're facing. How do we create an AI coach that can reflect the dynamic personalities and needs of an individual? Because there's someone over here that wants a incredibly empathic coach, and there's another one over here that wants a very direct coach that's not empathic. And how do we get AI to adapt to these individual differences? And that's the challenge. Right. And it could be from situation to situation. Like in this situation, I just need direct support, and this one I need it to be very emotionally supportive. And I think that's the challenge that we face is how do you make AI as dynamic as a human? And I don't think we may never get there, but that's the challenge that we're facing if we want AI coaching to be as impactful and as effective as possible.
Interesting conversation that is evolving, right, as we integrate all of this, because how do you make a variety with humans? You hire a coach and you may have several sessions other than if you terminate the contract, but you don't know what you're getting. And we talked earlier this morning about matching. Should you still be given the opportunity? I've talked to lots of organizations that are saying, I don't know how I feel about matching coaches because maybe I have software, maybe somebody selects and says, you need to work with these 3 coaches. Do I select a coach that's similar to me, or do I select a coach that is different, that will challenge me? Depending, as you're saying, on the situation, I may want somebody different. Also, do you need a coach, or do you need a mentor, or do you need a consultant? That's also other decisions. So I think it's all of the above. It's not one or the other. But I don't think that the decision maker knows enough to select the right type of whatever it is that they need for the situation. So that's why we rely on the organization to at least provide us with some guidelines and ability to become aware of what the options are.
Final response before we get interactive.
I just want to add one little thought that I was just thinking when I was following the conversation. For me, it sounds a little bit like AI can be kind of a perfect, so it can adapt to every situation or try to do it. And I think what's nice about a person is that it can be imperfect, and that a coach can be imperfect, and that you can have a safe room and maybe share some things with the coach that we were talking this morning with, that you wouldn't like share with any other person, and maybe also not with AI, but with some person that you really, really feel the trust after some sessions, which is something that can be built over time.
So, I hope it's okay if we move on to the interactive part.